So here's another strategy. I call it the Golden Gate Bridge, essentially. If you're familiar with the bridge, there are two pillars rooted to Mother Earth. The bridge stays independent of the outcome. What happens often in a presentation or as a speaker or whatever it may be, we're so sometimes focused on that outcome, we lose ourselves in the mix. And it's beautiful to have focus on the outcome of where we want to take people. Clarity is power. What we see, we can create, we can become, but we want to enjoy that process because that's where the magic happens. So you think about this, I think it was quoted Mozart, or paraphrase, it's like the notes don't make the music, the stillness between does. So the Golden Gate Bridge, I always think about this before I step on any stage. First off, I got to stay independent of the outcome. Ultimately, we want to cross people across this bridge. So in the beginning, how do I understand the world? How do I know that person in the audience? And that takes incredible research, right? We want to know the people that are in those seats. We want to understand, what their fears are, what their motives are, if we can find information or do that through questioning. So how do we understand and appreciate the world? And then when we're going across the bridge, maybe we're delivering the presentation or the content, whatever it may be, we also want to uncover, right? We want to uncover why they're there. How do we actually support them on this journey? But here's the biggest piece that I hope, maybe strikes in people like a lightning bolt. And I think that's where the breakthrough happens, is that what happens most often, and this is a muscle I learned with Tony. Tony is masterful at this. What happens most often for earlier speakers, including myself, is that we tend to lean in, meaning we get a little wobbly toward the end, especially when we want to empower somebody to make a decision, right? We want to invite, plant different seeds in their mind to blossom outside our time, or maybe it's to join an event of art, or whatever it may be. We get a little bit wobbly, right? Because sometimes we're always thinking about how they're perceiving us. So we want to let go of that. Vulnerability is undercurrent of our nature. So the essence of that is, how do we stay certain enough in our content, certain enough in our message, certain enough in who we are to be strong with them to get them across that bridge?
Welcome to Events Demystified podcast, where we explore and demystify the world of in-person, virtual, hybrid event AV production and technology by sharing insightful tips, tricks and tactics to make your events a success. This podcast is brought to you by Tree Fan Events, a woman-owned boutique event production agency. And your host is Anka Trifan, a technical event planner and producer with almost 2 decades of hands-on technical experience in event production.
Well, hello friends, and welcome to another episode of Events Demystified podcast, your one-stop shop for tangible, technical, and practical planning advice for anyone in the events industry. This podcast is brought to you by Trifan Events, a woman-owned boutique event production agency, and I am your host, Anka Trifan, and I do not sound like myself. I sound like someone that has had a cold for a while, and I'm trying to reconcile who this person is with the voice that I'm hearing. So if I sound a little confused listening to myself, just know that's where that's coming from. But enough about me. How about I introduce you to my brand new featured guest today, Anthony DeMario, speaker, trained peak performance strategist, learning experience architect via Tony Robbins, and certified brain health strategist with an expertise in cultivating educational and engaging experiences, emotion, and storytelling. Anthony is a speaker and host, a poet, and certified brain health strategist. As I mentioned, he has worked with leading behavioral scientists for Better Up to develop enriching learning experiences and was among a handful that was selected, trained, and traveled with Tony Robbins. As an experienced people and culture strategist with an insatiable hunger to stretch who he is and what he gives, he applies science and art to his exuberant lightning in a bottle delivery style. He was built in New York and has a colorful background of experience and training, which allows him to be versatile in his ways to educate, engage, and empower people to take action. As you get to know him better through our conversation, you will come to find out, as I did, that Ant is passionate, empathic, and infectious, and will leave you feeling energized to take massive action. And his unique gift to you are strategies to follow through on. You can learn more about Ant by following the links in the episode notes. And in the meantime, let's welcome our guest in. Did I mess up your bio pretty
No,
bad? You
when
can
you're
be
reading,
honest with me.
no, when you're reading it, I was like, wow, what kind of creative person wrote that? That's amazing. No,
Who
I
is
am
this
very grateful.
person that she's talking
Yeah,
about?
it's interesting. I'm a speaker, I'm a poet, I'm a writer. I tend to gravitate toward the middle of the room often. Yet I'm very pulled back. I spend a lot of time, as you know, our conversations in coffee shops and writing. So listening, which I'm very grateful and appreciative of, but listening to some of the things, it's like, it is what it is. But first, I just got to say thank you for being you. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm very grateful. I am incredibly inspired by you and your discipline. I got to meet you at that last experience. And also, those elements you shared of me are part of me. And for those of you listening and watching, those are elements of me, but I'm also a lot like each of you listening, because if you are here, that tells me that you're interested in learning, interested in growing, and really taking yourself to that next level, whatever it looks like for you. So I think we're a lot alike in that beautiful thread.
Well, thank you so much for wanting to be part of the show. And when we first explored this possibility, you're like, but what am I going to talk about? I'm like, I
Right.
don't know, because here's the thing, Anthony, I have not interviewed or had conversations before with poets. And this is a first timer for me as well. I know we've met in person, and we actually had a wonderful time at one of our events that we did together in Atlanta. It was a Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And that's a shout out to our good friends at Allied Productions for bringing us on, also our common client. And that was really the opportunity that brought us together, where we crossed paths for the first time. And like I said, to be honest, I kind of attempted to prepare for our conversation. And at the same time, I'm like, well, this is the first time when I'm talking to someone that is so creatively out of the box that I don't even know how this will go. So as much as I like to, be a bit structured, because that's how I thrive, and that's how I can then be more creative, because I have the structure first and the box, and then I can go out of the box whenever. I feel like today we're going to have to take a different approach, and we're just going to let the conversation flow and see what happens. So
I
do
love
you
that.
have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love that. It reminds me often in my sessions, I say, we think about the big sea, and the sea rips and roars on the surface, yet underneath the depths, there's stillness. And I think we find the stillness when we creatively explore and let ourselves be fluid. I think that's part of creativity, to be fluid, and to ultimately art through my lens is creative expression in motion. So how do we authentically explore that, bend, break, and blend what ideas we may be thinking about or thoughts, and then into something masterful. So I'm open to that. Let's flow together.
I like it. Well, we do have to keep it somewhat structured, because we have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Okay. Otherwise,
I
I
love
don't know
that.
what's going to happen. Come on. I'm trying to be
Storytelling.
so open and creative, but hey, come back to the structure. I will start with the one
Yeah,
question that I
please.
usually like to start with when I have conversations with my guests. And that is, just to kind of put in context for everyone that's out there listening, and for the first time, trying to figure out, okay, so who is Anthony DeMario? Who is he now? Who was he before? And what is the journey connecting those 2 points in time? So would you maybe give us a bit of a unfolding of this storyline, and how did you get where you are today? What are some of your dreams and passions, and what keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, for me right now in this moment, rooted in my essence, essentially just to be a voice for the voiceless. How do I become a relatable message for someone somewhere, as a speaker, as a storyteller, as a writer? But my journey, I love this one quote. It's like, the path is not there, the path is made by walking. So we all have to walk our own journey. And for me, I think about this one quote. So I know you know this. I think I gave you a bracelet. Be used my message. It's threaded in my being to be visible. I love that. To be visible enough to be seen, so we can help other people feel seen. So a long time ago, I had this amazing teacher. I think we have these moments of impact in our life, of course. I think about these timestamps in our nervous system. You smell something that brings you back to something, or a song takes you to a moment, or, you hear a song and it brings you back to maybe a relationship you don't want to be back in. But we had these things. And this teacher, she always noticed that I was always wandering. Sometimes my family would say I'm on planet Ant, right? Just creatively exploring. And she was like, I want you to know that wandering does not mean that you're lost. That means that you're exploring the depths of your expression, your creativity. And she helped me arrive in a moment. And then she shared with me a quote that has never left me. It shaped pretty much my entire message, and what brought me when I was on the TED stage, and what I shared there is that the quote she shared with me is, be original or die a copy. And I don't know who wrote that quote. And she said, ultimately, what you want to do is follow your curiosity. I could tell that you're curious. I could tell that you're always wandering and you're always observing. Don't shy from that. Follow it and don't labor the art, explore it. And that quote in that moment brought me through a journey in life of essentially, how can I show up so authentically and help other people be comfortable? And when I think about that often in my journey from being the most quiet person in school, I was incredibly shy. And you might have believed that, but I was incredibly shy. And I was I was always listening. So growing up and going through that, communication was always something I was passionate about, rhetoric, writing, and poetry in school. I didn't do well because I was, as you alluded to, I tend to think expansively outside the box. I never followed the structure, but I was always in the middle of the room. It seemed as though people were gravitating toward me. I gotta give love to my mom. I mean, she's like gravity. She pulls people in. I always watched her. I was like, she's really carved out of the heavens. She's
and maybe a little bit to your Italian, heritage, because let's be honest,
passion.
Italians love to be around the table and just share not just the meal, but a community.
The community in conversation for all of us, for people that are in event planning, people who are in experience. Conversation, I believe, is an invitation for us to collaborate with each other, which is extraordinary. And so I always tended to, people used to come and lean into me. And I think it's partly because I always say I'm some parts of the extraordinary of my mom, right? I was gifted those parts. And what I found myself doing most often is being in the middle and talking in a lot of ways and helping people explore different things and arrive at different things. So I fell in love with communication. I fell in love with being in the room. But for some of you out there, you might also know this to be true or feel this in some sort of way. I am a speaker. I tend to be on stage and I feel alive when I'm on stage, but I also don't like being the center of the room all the time. So I got really good at moving conversation. Maybe that's part of my upbringing. So, for example, somebody would say something about me and I'd be able to flex behaviorally and move that conversation and spotlight somebody. And what I found out later in my life is that that's a beautiful skill that I'm assuming a lot of each of you have because you're in this space. How do we spotlight people? How do we collaborate in that way? So what that brought me to—
But that deflection, do you feel like that deflection, though, it's also a bit of a uncomfortable place where you're like, I don't want to be the center of attention. I know that I am right now, but it feels uncomfortable to sit in it.
It feels uncomfortable to sit in it. It took me a while to get more comfortable. And so that muscle I built doing that, I think language is the wardrobe of our experience. So using different language and getting creative with words. And that's how I got so metaphorical with my mindset. And what's something really cool there, if it's okay that I share, that, even if you think or believe or know that you're a logical person and you're like, I don't know about all that creativity and I don't know, what is Ant talking about? Like swimming in the depths of my eyes. And what does that mean? So what's beautiful here is metaphorical thinking, connecting things that don't really connect with each other. For instance, I tend to think about the extraordinary vastness of the mind in its intrinsic ways, or how can I crack open the skull, climb into the mind and jump into your heart and splash something that touches you beautifully. So when we connect things that don't really make sense normally, what we're doing is actually beautiful for brain functionality and brain health. So for those of you that might not think you're creative, creativity is just taking things from the past, bending, breaking, and blending into something novel. So how can you start to pair different things and exercise that just like a muscle, right? So nonetheless, my journey was really built on just being called. It's like the message, the story, the journey found me. And I grew up in a tech company and I did that. And then I moved into Tony Robbins, as you alluded to. And then I touched the TED stage. And then I found myself in a mental health company and really connecting with the foundation to do some really beautiful work in my eyes and making a difference for those that don't know or feel comfortable how to reach out for resources or talk, that are navigating depression and anxiety and such. And if it's okay, I'm long-winded, I'm Italian. I think you know that. One thing that I want to share, because a lot of people ask me, is like, you're at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, you get to do these talks and these things. And yeah, I'm very grateful little, but it has been a decade plus. There are so many years where I was in rooms with one person, two person. I spent hours and hours a day reading the literature, shaping my message, rehearsing, practicing. How is this going to land? How can I really pierce that person's heart and really help them break through? How can I do it in a beautiful way? And there was this early on in my journey speaking, I was doing the initial BU talk, which essentially is a story of hope in different stories to help people really arrive to maybe feeling empowered to talk or go to therapy, whatever it may be that's comfortable for them. And I remember this was like the sixth talk in a row. 2 people showed up for this one. After the talk, I sat outside and I was just in a puddle of tears. And I called my mom. I said, Mom, I can feel goosebumps. I get emotional thinking about it. I said, Mom, what am I doing?
Totally okay.
Yeah.
Totally okay to be emotional. If there's
like,
an episode that we're gonna get emotional, it has to be this one.
Yeah, I was like, Mom, what am I doing? I can't pay my rent. I'm doing this in the tech company. I'm learning about people and culture, and I'm trying to do good human work. I want to make a difference, but how am I also, I think about this often. It's like, what are our gifts? How do we use our passions to serve something bigger than us? And also, how do we gain resources? Right? We got to make money. We also have to make money if we're going to donate. And I was like, Mom, what am I doing? And I remember she said something really, really powerful that stuck with me and I'll never forget. And I kind of expanded on that. She said, chase the dreams that keep you feeling alive. And now I share often, I say, chase the dreams that make you feel awake. And I remember going back to my apartment and I got there. She had a key, of course, Italian mother. Some of you know what I'm talking about. And she had sticky notes everywhere, sticky notes. I keep them everywhere. You're enough. You're powerful, you're loved. People want to hear you. People want to laugh with you. People want to be seen with you in a sense that you're vulnerable. And that's a beautiful thing about you. She filled my fridge with food. She paid my rent for the rest of the year. And she said, go after the dreams. I'll never forget that moment. And she encouraged me to really pursue in a really infectious way. And I just fell in love with the art, fell in love with the process for sure.
There's so much to unpack there. And I mean, seriously, it sounds like we just went on a super fast, super speedy journey and we barely touched the surface. First off, kudos to your mom setting such a wonderful example of what a person, a human should do in situations like this when you're vulnerable with them, and regardless if they're family or not. And the fact that she was there for you, I mean, that's amazing. There's definitely lots of notes to take for some of us mothers for the future. Another thing that stood out to me is this idea of, working hard for something that now you do get to enjoy, but it's not an easy journey. And anyone that thinks that anyone that's arrived in any place of influence, whatever the measure that might be, it was just an easy snap of the fingers and it just happens to people, that couldn't be further away from the truth. It's funny because I had something that I shared last week about this exactly in the same vein, this idea of anything that's worth fighting for, you've got to work hard for it, because otherwise you're not gonna even appreciate it if it's just given to you, or you just arrive at it without much effort or without putting in the work that it requires. And it's like you said, it's been many hours, days, months, years of work to even be able to get to one place. And then it's never gonna be just this one place, because obviously your aspirations and your dreams and your visions and your mission is just gonna carry you further and further away. So yeah, those two things so important. Now, and 2020 for all of us has been quite a bit of a crazy experience. And a bunch of my public speaker friends that I know, they were faced, with the realization that all the gigs and all their bookings have been canceled, and they were fresh out of work, not just for that moment, but for the foreseeable future. Now, as the industrious and curious person that I know that you are, I know that you started exploring what this digital virtual space looked like and created a platform for yourself. As I mentioned in the introduction, you have worked with some leading behavioral scientists on behalf of Better Up to develop some enriching learning experiences. Would you give us a bit of a background and backstory on how that happened and how it has been impacting your speaking and storytelling abilities and your capacity for writing even more and better poetry?
Yeah, well, thank you. And thank you for sharing that too. I agree with you totally. I kind of language the philosophy as me search, learn it, live it, grow it, give it. And if you're in your passions and you're pursuing a of purpose that makes you feel alive in your nature, with that philosophy, it will guide you. And I think about this too. The journey is everlasting, right? We're always on the journey. And going back to what you said really quickly, and I'll dive into that, it's always on my mind. This is part of your first question. Excuse me, I didn't get there, but it's always on my mind. I am only as good as my last experience. And the moment I fall asleep in nostalgia, or I'm not awake now, if I fall asleep in what I knew yesterday, I'm going to get past. So I have an insatiable hunger to not settle for less than I can be. I could share, I can give. So for all of you in this space, even, more specifically, it's how do you stay so curious, so hungry, so passionate to innovate, to think differently? Going back to this question too, we can only take people as far as we're willing to grow. Otherwise, we're kidding ourselves sometimes. And, when I think about the virtual world, it was abrupt for me. I mean, it shook me. It transformed everything for me and for many of you watching in a moment. I remember I was in St. Louis. I was traveling with Tony, and I was in St. Louis because I was one of the heart-driven speakers, which is a beautiful gift that we can unwrap maybe in a moment. But I was in St. Louis and the lockdown hit. I was doing everything in person, like each of you were at one point, I'm assuming. And, in a moment, and by the way, I'm in St. Louis. I just moved into this big apartment. I had no furniture. I had my yoga mat and my Nespresso machine because I fly with it. You coffee lovers know what I'm talking about. Coffee is my love language. And I remember the pandemic hit, lockdown happened, and I watched pretty much everything that I built in person crumble before my eyes. My way of doing business stopped, halted right in that moment. And I hit a brick wall. And I remember there was so much out of my control. Remember, to each of us, like what we focus on, we move toward. What we focus on, we tend to feel. What we focus on, we get pulled toward, right? And I remember sitting there, I was like, there's so much out of my control, but what focus can I put on that's in my control? What meaning can I give? And I love meaning. Maybe we can explore this in a moment. Meaning shapes our experience. Meaning is one of the beautiful tools each of us have to really transform our life, our work, and everything that we're after, and this beautiful globe that we're floating on and just hanging out drinking Starbucks. But and the experience is the language of life. So I'm sitting there and I just stopped and I just started to focus on, what was in my control, and started to think about how I could potentially, as a speaker, move my business into this, what's now going to become a virtual thing. And I remember just a flood of emotion just raging like a river through me. And I just stopped. I screamed out loud, "And see it as it is." And then I paused and I cried. I'll never forget that moment either. And I said, see it as it is, see it brighter, and then see it through. And that is stuck with me. And I share this in a lot of my trainings now, because what happened in that moment is I stopped going this way and I was right there. I was like, okay, this is what it is. So now how can I be innovative? How can I be curious? How can I learn how to transform Zoom or transform Google Meet or Team to do what I did in person? And to answer your question for me, and then what I learned working with some really great scientists, I thought about this. My mission essentially is to educate, is to engage, and to empower. So with these 3 E's, how do I root? And how do I stay dynamic? How do I really break through for people and, still keep the element of in person? So I made a decision in that moment. And I think decisions shape us. Each of us have made countless decisions in our life, or maybe not some, good or bad, I don't know, that have got us to exactly where we are now. And if we're satisfied with it, that's okay. But if we're up for whatever that looks like next, maybe it's a different few decisions. What are we going to focus on? What does it mean? What can we do now, right? That could really transform us. And I decided to not change my style. So maybe this could land in some of your hearts with some wind behind my words. My family lost a lot of things. I had to rebuild everything. J.K. Rowling, she says, rock bottom is a solid foundation you rebuilt your life on, right? And Hemingway says, we must light up in our decisions as if they are gifts. So for that decision, I said, you know what? Most speakers are gonna try and do the virtual world. And by the way, no judgment. I think the moment we judge someone, we lose power to influence them. I am open to all different things. But for me, my decision was, you know what? I'm going to stand up. I'm going to do what I do in person. I'm going to have people put their hand in there. I'm going to tell people to unmute and give me some vocal command. I want to help them make a shift just like I would in person. And I didn't change my style. And for me, that helped me kind of move in a different way than some others when that first happened. This is new to all of us, right? I don't know if anybody, I've never went through a pandemic like this before. The one beautiful thing though, I gotta say, I love writing cards. My friends got so many love letters from me in the mail. My friend Dave was like, are we pen pals? But, and then when I got to Better Up and I went through that process, and then in that process, I got to work with some incredible behavioral scientists on learning how do we really transform learning in the virtual world. And there's so much we could go there, but my invitation for each of you would be, if you're just leading a meeting or a presentation, it would be to understand that we are in incredibly busy worlds, right? There's Slack, there's 3 computers. So how do we gain their attention? How do we create interest? How do we expand emotion? And how do we help them arrive to an outcome? I call it the 4 pillars. And then also to know that we have to be willing to go there first with care, with curiosity, with warmth. And if we go there first, if we can lead them first, most often people might feel invited or comfortable enough to follow in a way that helps us really cultivate something that's live there. And yeah, that's kind of how I arrived in a really beautiful way there.
Quite a journey.
Yeah, you should come over for Sunday dinner. We'll have it's about
No
a 4-hour
kidding. I can't wait. Okay, so on the same vein that just in maybe a quick few points there to summarize maybe some of the tips that I know that you have learned, through your experience with working with Tony Robbins. How do you run more captivating meetings and events virtually, but also in person? And how do you present yourself as a speaker, a presenter that is confident no matter what setting they're in, especially if you're an introvert? That's something that you alluded to earlier. And I personally think that you're an ambivert. You probably did not label yourself that just yet, but I can definitely, identify with being an introvert myself, have been all my life. And then the world have brought out of me this extroverted side that I show to the world for a small amount of time before I go back into my little shell where that's where I draw my energy and that's where I draw my strength from. And it's just little, measures, very controlled measures of how much I put out there in an extroverted way before I come back to my inner side, right? Where I really recharge. So if you're an introvert that, coming on stage is literally like sucking you out of energy, sucking you dry of everything that you have, but you're going to put out everything you've got, you're going to place it on the table. Any tips that you have for someone that maybe has struggled to show up confident virtually, but also even in person if they're an aspiring speaker?
Yeah, I love that question. And I'll have to do some research and learn about that. And maybe I do align with that in ways. And, we're a direct reflection of our beliefs and our product of our patterns. We are our rituals. So whatever follows I am, we tend to become. The story we tell, we live. What I mean by that is when we get on stage, especially if we're more reserved sometimes, right, it is going to be exhausting. It's metabolically exhausting, right? We're depleting what I call our body budget. So make sure for each of you to have grace for yourself after, right? Invest in yourself, take care of yourself. But our promises equal our confidence. And what I mean by that is the consistency helps us become more when we're out there. So to go a little bit deeper on that, we know what we know and we don't know what we're going to say. So what I share a lot when I go into different groups of speakers and people that are presenting is make sure that the content is living and breathing in your body. Words matter, right? So we want that to live and breathe in our body. We want to be congruent with that content because people are going to feel that. If we're wishy-washy, they're going to feel wishy-washy. But if we're absolutely rooted, boom, they're going to feel that larger than life presence. And a tool here would be, I think about this often. Language is so powerful. As you know, words are incredibly powerful. I'll make it real for the audience really quickly. Have you ever got a text? Your phone vibrates, you look at your phone and the phone says, I love you, I'm sorry, forgive me, I thank you. And maybe you can think about that moment now and you can feel something, right? That's how powerful words are. They span our biology a great distance. So before you get on that stage, the butterflies in your stomach could mean nervousness, or the butterflies in your stomach could mean excitement, right? So if you get a little bit nervous, and that's okay before you get on that stage, but you're a person that loves roller coaster rides, I would invite you to think about this. If you were to close your eyes in both those moments, the internal sensations are exactly the same, but we're giving it a different meaning. meaning limits us or empowers us. So how do you help encourage your butterflies to fly in formation? And one way is think about the words that you're using and before you get on that stage, and have yourself what I call a golden practice, and to make sure that you are feeling the most balanced that you can before you get on that stage. Sleep matters. We could talk about that moving into emotion later, but I always say your 24-hour clock really matters. And the more mindful you become about yourself before you even step on that stage, the more powerful you are out there. So how do you get your butterflies flying into the same formation and to understand that ultimately you are guiding them? So here's another strategy. I call it the Golden Gate Bridge, essentially. If you're familiar with the bridge, there are two pillars rooted to Mother Earth. The bridge stays independent of the outcome. What happens often in a presentation or as a speaker or whatever it may be, we're so sometimes focused on that outcome, we lose ourselves in the mix. And it's beautiful to have focus on the outcome of where we want to take people. Clarity is power. What we see, we can create, we can become, but we want to enjoy that process because that's where the magic happens. So you think about this, I think it was quoted Mozart, or paraphrase, it's like the notes don't make the music, the stillness between does. So the Golden Gate Bridge, I always think about this before I step on any stage. First off, I got to stay independent of the outcome. Ultimately, we want to cross people across this bridge. So in the beginning, how do I understand the world? How do I know that person in the audience? And that takes incredible research, right? We want to know the people that are in those seats. We want to understand, what their fears are, what their motives are, if we can find information or do that through questioning. So how do we understand and appreciate the world? And then when we're going across the bridge, maybe we're delivering the presentation or the content, whatever it may be, we also want to uncover, right? We want to uncover why they're there. How do we actually support them on this journey? But here's the biggest piece that I hope, maybe strikes some people like a lightning bolt. And I think that's where the breakthrough happens, is that what happens most often, and this is a muscle I learned with Tony. Tony is masterful at this. What happens most often for earlier speakers, including myself, is that we tend to lean in, meaning we get a little wobbly toward the end, especially when we want to empower somebody to make a decision, right? We want to invite, plant different seeds in their mind to blossom outside our time, or maybe it's to join an event of art, or whatever it may be. We get a little bit wobbly, right? Because sometimes we're always thinking about how they're perceiving us. So we want to let go of that. Vulnerability is undercurrent of our nature. So the essence of that is, how do we stay certain enough in our content, certain enough in our message, certain enough in who we are to be strong with them to get them across that bridge? And to go a little bit deeper is that if you're in an event or you're doing something and you're sharing something that you've built or something you've created, whatever it may be specific to your business, and you're encouraging people or inviting people to maybe go into your world in some capacity, some things might show up, right? Some stories they might have from past experiences. But if we go there certain, if we go there with care and curiosity, and we know that they've already bought that story that might not help them get across that bridge, we have not served them. Our service is to be rooted to get them across that bridge. And I truly believe in my heart, curiosity is medicine for the mind. So we can do that through questions. And the last thing, sorry, those long-winded for speakers, presenters out there, another big thing is, when you think about this too, is that you want to have fun. A big part of my early on when I was speaking is I was just so focused, so hungry, which is amazing. But I lost the element of me that makes me, is my playfulness, my goofiness when I'm out there. And I encourage you to have fun. Play is the portal of everything into everything we can create with those people in that audience. And how do we become relatable? How do we become a friend? And how do we help them cross that bridge in a beautiful way, whatever that looks like for us? So how do we enjoy, how do we have fun and authentically show up? Because they'll feel that for sure.
And I don't know if I want to break this moment in the flow of this, because it's beautiful and it's like this picture of the Golden Bridge definitely playing in my mind, and it made so much sense as you were describing it. But we do have to take a short break. We will be right back. Before we move any further, I wanted to give a quick shout out to our main sponsor, Trifan Events, which is a boutique event planning and production agency that will come alongside you, offering personalized event planning and technical support, strategic event design, production and technology management, and flawless execution for live, virtual, and hybrid events. The team at Trifan Events is passionate about planning and producing event experiences that get people involved with true moments of interaction, engagement, and co-creation, while offering white glove treatment throughout the entire planning process, enabling you to reach your event goals with the use of creativity, production tools, and event technology. To find out how Trifun Events can plan and produce your event become memorable, go to trifunevents.com. Welcome back to our fascinating conversation with our amazing guest today, Anthony.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Anthony, there's so much to be said about this struggle that many people have with finding their purpose and mission in life. And may that be, professionally, personally, or both. How would you describe your journey to finding your own purpose? You alluded to it a little bit. Also, what kind of challenges did you have to overcome? And how has that impacted the person that you are today?
I love that. Thank you for asking that question. And for those of you that are still with us, I know I can't see you. Just put your hand in the camera. I want to give you all a quick little high five. Awesome work thus far. And, I've never really shared this, but it just came to me out loud. And then we'll talk about purpose. It's something that's really meaningful for me when I explore. I talk about it a lot. I'm always wrestling different thoughts about it. For my journey, what I came into is, in this world of personal development. I actually just wrote a poem about that. I put that up there somewhere. I haven't memorized it yet, but personal development's an interesting space, right? It's a very wild space right now, which is great. I think more people, and that's maybe the level of optimism that is pouring through me and flooding through my veins, is that people are hungry to learn, hungry to grow. And I think that's extraordinary. It's a very wild space right now. So in my journey, I first, of course, have been heavily influenced by Tony. So it was a dream for me to be part of that team, to be trained and to kind of step into that. But for my journey, I was on the journey of me search, learn it, live it, grow it, give it. We touched on this. And what I mean by that is, as far as purpose, is I was learning all the things, most specifically about emotion and the brain, because I was trying to understand me. And the beauty about that was, as I was learning it, I was trying to bend, break, and blend, going back to creativity, the science in an artful way that I can then retell myself and utilize for my life, but also share with my friends if they were up for that or wanted to explore that. So it became me. And sometimes you don't find the purpose finds you, and its purpose is greater than outcome. The why is bigger than you, the how follows. So I wanted to understand me. Like, why did I feel so intensely? Why was I moved? Why were in my bones would vibrate in the chains of season? Like, I wanted to understand. So maybe then in turn, I could help somebody, the younger me. I could be a voice for the voiceless, a relatable message. So for me, in going back to this, I've never shared this. I was so passionate to not only read all the books that everybody was reading, which are amazing, that you see on the first shelf. I wanted to go 4 layers deeper. And I kind of stumbled into this when I was living in Northern California. The beautiful Stanford School is there. And I was able to kind of tour and explore. And I fell in the lap of some really extraordinary neuroscientists. And what I found out is I wanted to go where they were publishing, Nature, Cell. I wanted to go read those papers, because a lot of people were talking about these things, but if you were to go deeper, they might not be able to give you some substance. And I didn't want to be like that. So I picked a specific area. And by the way, we never stopped learning, but my mission was to keep learning the science and how to transform that in an artful way. So going back to purpose, it was like, how do I live it and breathe it? And my rule, and for any of you, going back to your confidence question too, is my rule for myself is, if I don't live it, I don't teach on it or share on it. I have to live and breathe that. It's like, for instance, gratitude. 12th year in a row, I don't miss a morning. You ask my friends on our race trip every summer, they know every morning Ant's going to be doing his thing, and that's okay. So, that's part of it. There's beautiful concepts like ikigai, reason for being. Maybe each of you can explore if you're up for that, or kintsugi, golden joinery. There's different ways people in different parts of the world have explored purpose. But simply, I think about this. What are your gifts? What are your passions? So for example, for me, I'm passionate about speaking. I love words. I love creating theater in the mind. I love being on stage because I can move people like an ocean. I love that. And so that's my passion. That's my gift. Passion is for us, purpose is for others. So how now can you use your gifts and your passions and serve something bigger than you. It could be your community. It could be, for me, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is very near and dear to me. So how can I use my speaking and my talks to make a difference in that world? It could be your family. It could be your kids, to be an extraordinary mom or dad or friend or person in the community. But how do you use what you are gifted with, your passions, and how do they come alive serving something bigger than you, and falling in love with that process? I think it was Gandhi who said something like, we discover ourselves in the selfless service of others. And I think that's one way, or one portal in to arrive in a sense of purpose. But it's an art. It's an art for each of us. It looks different for you than it does me. So what I encourage you is really get curious about what you love to do, what you're good at, what is meaningful for you, and how you can utilize that in something that's bigger than you, that also aligns with your identity and who you are. And when that starts to unravel, there's a beautiful golden thread between, what it felt like purposeless to what it feels like purposeful. And I think that really threads something beautiful we can all wear in our moments.
And I think I have to write a book with all the quotes that you just breaking down today during our podcast. So I don't know if I'll be able to live this whole life being done with this one project of demystifying Ant and everything that he said in literally 45 minutes, because there's so much to unpack. I don't even know where to start. So I'm just going to try to piece together different things that you mentioned and try to draw meaning based on where I'm at, and everyone that's listening based on where they're at. And I feel like talking to someone that can explore so much and can, be so outside of the box, it's impossible not to dive into the anatomy of emotions, as you have mentioned a little earlier, right? And understanding the ingredients of emotions. And personally, one of the best books that I've read recently, and as I was navigating my own sea of emotions, was Brené Brown's Atlas of the Heart. I actually have it right here.
I love that.
Let's see. Yeah. And it was, for anyone that hasn't read it, it's a meaningful mapping of all the connections and the language of the human experience by exploring the words, as you mentioned, that we use to describe our emotions and our feelings in order to better tell our stories, but also the stories of others. And this book has really created this brand new framework for me as to how I use my own words to express how I feel. And I would love to hear from you how you journeyed into exploring your own emotions, into the anatomy of emotions, and how that has impacted you personally, professionally, and also how we apply that within our events as the main framework of our conversation.
I love that. And we could tie that really beautifully into a lot of what we talked about too, to help us arrive to this. And Brené Brown, extraordinary writer. Going back to what you said about Brené, what I love so much, and one of my favorite neuroscientists talks about often, is these words. Because going back to what I said about butterflies, helping them fly in formation, we can use different words to expand our experience and how we talk about emotion. And that helps us also show up if we're speaking or presenting or doing the experience or whatever that looks like for us. So for me, I just got really curious because I didn't understand. And I think for all of us, the more we understand or learn, the more control we have. We then become, in turn, the architects of our life experience. And we have that beautiful gift. And I just thought about, all the times where I felt I lost control of my emotion. So I wanted to understand how, a lot of people are talking about how do we regulate our emotions? Well, let's go a little bit into this. And also this could walk us into how do we support ourselves before we step on that stage and maybe feel more confident if we are introverted as well. The brain is 3 pounds. It's a thinking flesh, right? So if we want to grow, we want to evolve, we got to sometimes just think differently, right? A perspective is power. What we feel colors the way we think. So in turn, the brain keeps a score, the body's a scorecard. And it's ineffably complex. I mean, each neuron is just as complicated as New York City. There are 90-ish billion neurons that are like microscopic jellyfish. They float, they throb, they spark electricity, they spray chemicals, all those ones we know and love so well. And they get close enough, like lovers in a kiss, but they don't touch. And what's really beautiful about that is that there's so much we know and so much we don't know. And I am not perfect, but I'm imperfectly me, like each of you exploring on this journey. And that flickering lamppost in our head that keeps us awake is our consciousness, the experience of being who we are, what makes you, you, me. And when I walk us into emotion, I just want us all to kind of think about for a moment is that this brain is locked in a dark vault, right? It's just getting signals from the external environment. environment. So meaning and thought is just as powerful as physical action to the brain, right? So the words, the language, that's why I say language is wardrobe of our experience. The words we use going to Bernays is really potent. And the brain is the densest expression of who we are, our hopes, our dreams, our desires, and it's what makes us us. And it's not like software. You know, it's interesting. If you read the literature, the way we talk about the brain evolves with us in technology. We talked about it as gears, we talked about it as software, and it's more so like a dense forest. And the movement through is the mind, right? It's wandering through conscious thought, visceral sensations we'll talk about, memory and imagination. So what I want to land to launch this into emotion is emotion through scientific literature doesn't happen to us, it's happening for us. And essentially that emotion isn't built into our brain, we build it. We are essentially the embodied experience and we have more control than we think. And when I think about that often is that there are three main ingredients is one of the top published neuroscientists in the space of emotion shares. If you think about emotion, there are three powerful ingredients. The first ingredient is prediction. The brain is a prediction machine. We don't react to the world. Let me make it real for the audience really quickly. So for those of you listening or watching, do you know the song by Queen, We Will Rock You, right? You may be thinking about that song, you may know that song. So I want you to think about the song and watch my hands. You ready? And you may be like, Ant, I can hear that. Why? Because this thing doesn't react, it predicts. So if we understand that alone is powerful. So if we want to have different emotional experiences tomorrow, we have to set ourselves up differently today. Novel environment, right? Understanding how we can support our biology. So our actions today launch us into different predictions tomorrow. So we'll start there. There's one piece, prediction. One of the ingredients, probably the main ingredient. The second ingredient is concept, meaning, language, which Bernays talks about a lot. We create concepts. We draw invariable lines in the world. The redness of red. A weed could be a weed to somebody, and to somebody else that could be a salad, if you're with me there. So we have these concepts that we create, and what's really powerful is that we can create concepts that support us and some that chain us, lock us down like we're too exhausted to move in the heart of a storm, or some that free us and make us feel alive. So that's one piece of it, right? And meaning creates emotion, emotion drives our life. The third piece is affect. So affect this is where it gets a little bit complex because people talk about it in so many different ways. So if you're familiar, affect or mood or feeling. So affect is more simple than emotion. Affect's like that fuzzy vision of emotion. Essentially in science, it's high arousal, low arousal, or it's negative or positive valence. So essentially, if you think about this, moment to moment, how we'll call it energy, how energized we are or not, or how negative we could be feeling affectively or feeling in that moment, or how positive we could be feeling. And we're always going up in this scale. So if we're up here, we can land in joy, or down here, we can just land in relaxed, or over here, we're in sadness, or maybe in here, we're in anger, or we're frustrated. So these three ingredients create emotion. So the reason I share that is how do we better understand how we can support ourselves up to be emotionally fit in those moments when we step back on that stage or behind the scenes and we're leading the production. So the way we can arrive to that is this. Think about it simply as a body budget. So if you're familiar, I don't know if you've ever been there before, but if we decline our body budget, and we're going to feel emotionally imbalanced. I don't know if you've seen the red before in your bank account, right? It doesn't make you feel good. So how do we understand, how do we set ourselves up to budget ourselves so we can feel more replenished, more centered, and really understand how we're feeling, what concepts we're meaning, and what predictions we're going to make? Because that's basically at its core essence how the brain activates and moves. So when I think about this, and then going back to emotion, if it's okay, can I share this thing I think about as far as setting yourself up for a body budget? Is that okay, really quickly?
Yeah, totally. And I'm going to actually share some of the things that I do because I love this topic because it's like many times, you just feel down and you don't even know why. And you have to ask yourself, what is happening in my body? What am I feeling right now? What is not okay? And how can I do to restore the balance?
I love that. Restore the balance. We got to make some investments, which is awesome. And knowing what also metabolically is costly. So for all of you, like right now, learning And exercise is like 401k. It's a long-term investment. It's incredibly beneficial for us, right? It's a long-term investment. So knowing that is powerful. And our brain leverages our environment to reshape itself, which is also a really gift. The nervous system has the ability to remap. What a beautiful thing. Our lifespan is dependent on us. So going back to what you said was really, really powerful. And going back to butterflies, it's like, okay, am I nervous or am I excited? And how did I sleep? So the most important question thinking about body budget for all of us to ask ourselves is, what does my body need in this moment if I am feeling a little bit scattered? And this will walk us into what I call the 24-hour clock, because some of you might be familiar with the Sunday scaries, or Monday morning you wake up and you feel unsettled and you're checking your email. Well, that cortisol spike is healthy. That's your brain saying, hey, it's time to move. And what if you woke up next Monday, you're like, wow, I got that cortisol spike. I'm alive. I need to move and I'm going to go crush today, compared to what meaning we could give to it that could pull us back. So 24-hour clock, how do we restore? How do we balance our budget? And really quickly, just so I know we got some analytical and logical people thinking about. So the brain's most important job is to run the systems of the body. So we have homeostasis, as you may be familiar with, equilibrium, right? We're always trying to find equilibrium. And then we have allostasis, which we can call in our context is rebudgeting, right? So how do we rebudget? Well, I think about it super simple. For me, this is what I live and breathe. And I'm not perfect again, but I'm still growing like each of you too. If you're having so many days that you feel imbalanced, come back to that question, what does your body need? And do you need sleep? Do you need nutrition? Do you need hydration? Do you need connection? What are these questions that you can ask yourself? Our questions lead us to ultimately the outcomes that we need to arrive at in some way. And really quickly, think about it as a 24-hour clock, right? When you wake up in the morning, 8 to 10 minutes of sunlight, beautiful research on this. And if you're in the parts where there might not be sun, there's some cool apps that still show you that there's still lux out there. Like the sun is still out there. So how do we do that? And then how do we, incorporate reflection? How do we incorporate breath? The breath is a tool to regulate our nervous system. Going back to that thing I was talking about, we can increase arousal, or we can hit what I call the sweet spot too. Loose enough to have fun, focus enough to take action. We can do that through the breath, which is powerful, and also the eyes. And what I mean by this is, if you're feeling a little bit scattered before you have to give a talk, going back to that, or perform in any capacity that you may be doing, beautiful research called the cathedral effect, and also seeing things past us. So if you were to go for a walk and the vastness, the largeness of just looking up and seeing things past, first of all, for the 24-hour clock, rebudgeting ourselves, a walk is powerful. A walk is a beautiful way for the brain to shower itself in these beautiful neurotropic factors called BDNF. It's basically fertilizer for your cognitive ecosystem. And if you open up your view, the eyes help you find that calm. So if you think about this, when you are super focused, where's your vision, right? You're dialed in, right? You're laser focused. But if you're out for a walk, you're looking up, you're seeing things past, you're more in panoramic, you're going to activate a sense of calm. And there's beautiful research around this. So sunlight, reflection, gratitude, which I say, anchor in gratitude, you bathe in happiness, breath work, using the breath, using our eyes. And then there's nutrition. By the way, I'm Italian. I'm not a nutritionist. I'll tell you that straight up. But I will say this, from what I've seen in the research, and by the way, nature is so tonic. It's so healing. Nutrition is that, and this is where you're the expert. But what I think is something for all of us to think about is that cadence does matter. A couple of days a week, skip breakfast, maybe, if in respect for those that don't have food, because the brain's a hybrid model. It runs on glucose and ketones. So just shifting here and there, you may feel a sense of increased clarity. If you don't do quantum physics, you're not going to start doing quantum physics, but essentially it's really powerful. And then connection, right? People invest in our nervous system. We all know those people that negatively invest in our nervous system or our body budget, and also all those people that really invest in it. So maybe calling a friend, and then going back to creativity, metaphorical thinking, right? Thinking flesh. What's something novel you can read about your space or learn about your space? And the most important thing that I hope really strikes each and every one of you, and something that I'm so working on myself, is sleep. It's the elixir of life. It is emotional first aid. It is therapy. And in our business, in our world, some days we don't, and that's okay. But thinking about emotion and prediction, affect or feeling, concepts, meanings, and language we use, these three ingredients to create the emotional experience, and we are the architect of that. And then our 24-hour clock, our body budget, sunlight, gratitude, reflection, breath work, walk, movement, nutrition, connection, thinking differently, and sleep. And with those little seeds, I hope they blossom in your mind of just, how could you look at your day in a way to set up your biology to really help you feel more replenished, more alive, more connected, and more certain in your authentic self when you show up in your work. Emotions are essentially what experiences mean to you in an embodied way. They're not built into your brain, but built by the brain with multiple ingredients, essentially helping us balance our well-being. If we take care of our well-being, we can directly impact and create the results that we're after.
All right, coming back. Fair warning, everyone. I have not asked Ant to prepare anything as far as poem goes. I have no idea what he has in mind. This could go either direction. So I'm just going to let you, Ant, lead the way and see where we'll go from here.
I love that. And thank you for doing that. And I keep what I call my artist manifesto. So it's a few lines I wrote, and maybe this could tie together everything we talked about and ultimately maybe spark some creativity, maybe some electrical love in each of your veins to go pursue your own art. And whatever your art is, my friends, make your art. And before I share this, and thank you for allowing me to do so, we are all wildly creative, right? And what's the beautiful thing about that is mind wandering isn't bad. Let yourself explore those thoughts and connect them in weird ways. Salvador Dali wrote, the 15-minute before sleep, the hypnotic state, that's the portal into our imagination. So maybe you use that, talking about getting good sleep when we talked about emotions. And Edison used to sit back in his chair, and when he dozed off, he caught himself, and that's where he had his best ideas. So utilizing your environment to be creative too, I think is incredibly powerful. So when I arrive at this, poetry is everything to me. I write to think, and I don't know what that means for you, but whatever it is, I hope you unleash. So this is the artist manifesto. Passion will flood your veins and spark electrical storms in your brain. The depths to which you feel, observe, and experience inside out, vast and expansive, and the artist has immense power to truly experience the rawness of each moment. Touched by fire, we are all creatures of our madness, and we shouldn't shy from the moonlight. The exuberant essence of their being, of our being, vibrates and illuminates and burns brighter in its own flames of our passion. An ineffable witness to life in motion. Poetry and art rises and falls like a vanishing perpetual horizon in our eyes. And when we give it enough meaning, we attach enough meaning to that vanishing horizon, it truly pulls us, because push only goes so far. We have a glimpse of that divine that floods through us and flows through us. It's profound, it's vigorous, it's metaphorical, it's grandiose. Art is what we make it to be. We mustn't shy from the madness that blankens the moonlight, yet walk proudly into the light. Don't dare let the melancholic chains hold you back from creating your art. Break free and let the raging river of passion carry you into mastery. Romantically and intimately bend, break, and blend the past into a novel artist breakthrough. I've never read that one out loud. So
that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us, especially if it's, sounds like a premiere.
Yeah, you were lovely, by the way. I love that we are friends now. I can't wait to continue to build relationships. And I'm a giver, as you know. And just to touch on that last thing is, each of you that are listening, know that you're not alone on whatever you're feeling. And there are people here to listen to you. There are people here to connect with you. There are resources out here for you. And sometimes it's the darkest part of the night where there's a sky full of friendly little stars. And to help listen to that big bad sun, that sun, all of us, and help us really break through and rise and begin again, because the sun always does, and so will each of you.
If that was supposed to be your last thought, you just said it without me even having to prompt you. So I think we just read each other's minds or something. I have to say, I'm totally with you when it comes to writing to think. I love that you put it in words like that, because it really expresses how I use my writing many times. And it helped me in the past for the many years where when I need to really get inside my brain, pause and reflect, writing has helped me create that straight up avenue into, the middle of my brain where there's a bit of chaos happening there. There's also logic and there's emotions and there's beautiful things happening, but there's also a lot of chaos. So trying to dive to the point, writing has been the way I've been able to use, as the avenue to get there. And I love that you put it in words in which it makes sense. Writing to think. hello, that totally makes sense to me. So I can
I
see
love
now
that.
why we've connected on so many different things, aside from professionally being there in the space that we were and working with each other and supporting each other for that one event. But then also as we grew our friendship, I see why and how. And our brains think a little bit too much the same. And that's a little scary. I am nowhere close to writing poems. I try. I feel like right now, Ant has rubbed a little bit on me where I put things together on paper and like, that would make
I
a
have
great
to.
poem. Not.
You are a writer. For all of you listening, and maybe someday you'll share some of your writing. And I know you're writing. We've talked about this, but you do write beautiful poetry. I've read some of yours, so you have to take that in your heart because you do have that. And yeah,
I appreciate
it's
you for saying that. I don't think the world is ready for it.
And what's interesting too, and I know we're at time. This has been lovely, by the way. Thank you for inspiring me to think differently. I really appreciate you and your presence. Presence is power. I was really pulled in by your presence. And I think for those of you that are watched and listened to previous podcasts and been on this journey, I think you would align with me in saying that your presence is really powerful. And for each of you to just play, have fun with the creativity and use nature, use your environment and really enjoy that piece and think differently.
Thank you so much for sharing those thoughts and so much more than thoughts. I mean, like I said, to unpack this entire episode, it will take so long. I'm going to allow the audience to listen and re-listen and view and rewatch this episode as many times as they need to be able to just take it in segments. And sometimes you might just have to like come back to the same segment to just gather all the things that have been said, because again, it's been a lot of good stuff, good information, so many quotes. I can't even start, counting. What I would love to ask you now, and if you'd like to share with our audience any place that you hang where you prefer to be at if they want to connect with you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I know you're incredibly talented, by the way. And I think the light's going down in here in New York. So you must be bringing me up.
There's a person. It's there.
I'm here. What's up? So for those of you that would like to walk with me in life, Instagram's my website's demario.co. I do workshops and such there. You can find more about my experiences, but Instagram is probably the fastest way to connect with me. And also want to extend the invitation. If there's something that you want to go deeper on with me and you'd love to open that conversation, connect with me on Instagram. I'm happy after you watch this podcast or listen to it to go deeper. There's so much more we can expand upon. So feel free, reach out to me. I'm always doing coffee chats because the beautiful thing about that is I get to learn from you too. So we learn together. And I think that's something really extraordinary about being human, which is awesome. So going back to the first question you asked, it's a journey. Success is not dependent on skill. It's, I believe, the psychology that we adopt that says we can, we will, and we must. So love to connect with you. Ant Demario on Insta. You follow me, I'll follow you, and we'll follow each other into creative mastery.
I love that. Well, friends, this is it for today's episode. I know that we're a little bit over our normal time, but guess what? So worth it. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And I can't thank you enough for this time that you share with us, with me, for everything that you have just spilled on the air. And I will have to take it in increments going back. Just to be able to absorb it all. I will have some of those links in the episode notes for anyone that's curious how to connect with and where he's at. Some of the links to his poetry. Tell your secret, he does share quite a bit of his poetry on Instagram stories. So do go and follow him if you're curious and if you want to dive more into that creative side of yours, because I'm sure we can all write poems. Now, how good those poems might be, that's a different story. And as far as the podcast goes, stay connected with us, subscribe to make sure that you don't miss any of our future podcast episodes coming up every single week on Fridays. Thank you, and you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Evening. And thank you.
Middle of the day, evening.
Thank you for being you. Thank you for the work that you do. It's meaningful and it matters.
Thank you so much. Thank you for staying with us all the way till the end.
Thank you for listening to the Events Demystified podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment to review it, rate it, and share it with other event professionals that could benefit from it. Connect with us on social at Events Demystified Podcast. We would love to hear from you and what you're up to. If you'd like to learn more about 3FAN Event services and find out if we're a good fit in supporting your event, can we help your event be successful with a 20-minute free consultation? Link in the episode's notes. Thanks for tuning in.